Mandalorian Super Commandos. Elite Mandalorian warriors in service of their new master Darth Maul and the insidious Shadow Collective. But how do we get them on the tabletop as fast as possible while still having them look good, I hear you ask?
Nobody asked.
The fundamental part of this technique is going to be underpainting, and we're going to be doing this in two main ways. The first of which is going to be giving each of our miniatures a white zenithal highlight over a black base coat. This is going to do a lot of our work for us, as it will create natural looking shadows in the recesses of our models, while highlighting the areas that will be hit by natural light. I'm using a white ink through my airbrush here to do my zenithal, but you can use a white rattle can if you don't have an airbrush. Next we hit each model with a light dry brushing of white on the areas hit by the white zenithal. We're not looking to add any detail to the shadows here, as we mainly want to draw attention to the top half of our Mandos. Our last bit of prep work is to paint each miniature's visor with some thinned down white paint. The female Mandalorian miniatures are going to be a little bit more difficult here than their male counterparts due to their smaller visors. You could also, if you have it, use white ink here, as it flows much better into small details like this. This step will create a strong foundation for the bright yellow visor tint that we add later, and depending on your skill level you can leave this until just before adding the yellow. But don't be like me and give your white enough time to dry first before continuing. The good news is that from here on out we are going to be using almost entirely Games Workshop contrast paints, which will essentially put a coloured filter over the work we've already done, meaning we can add some bright, vibrant colours to our miniatures while preserving the details we highlighted earlier. Now this will obviously work with any of your contrast paint equivalents, for example Army Painter Speed Paints, Vallejo Express Colour, etc, etc. I just don't have any of those here to show you today, but feel free to drop any good equivalents in other ranges you find in the comments below, as I'd love to hear from you. So moving on, starting with Basilicanum Grey, we are going to be picking out any of the Mando's undersuit, as this will give a nice impression of the type of grey overalls they appear to be wearing. This step is more to distinguish these parts from the black armour panels we'll be adding in a moment, so don't worry if it looks a little bland at this stage. This is supposed to be the most boring part of these miniatures. If you want to add a bit of variation though, like I have here, you can switch to some Griff Charger Grey to add some bluey tones to the undersuits, which will contrast nicely with the red armour parts while not drawing away from them. At this stage of the process you can afford to make a few mistakes and get paint in places you don't intend, as this colour is very similar to our base coat, so will be covered easily by our other colours. So being quite a bit more precise for our application, we can start painting the leg armour, holsters and any blasters, gauntlets, the outer part of the shoulder armour, collar and select parts of the helmet in Black Templar. The fun part with this step really is that you can choose to shake up where you place your black on the miniature, as what's left is what will be getting that bright red treatment. The Super Commandos are naturally a varied bunch, so it would be only fitting to have some inconsistencies in how they are each painted. Our last contrast base coat is going to be using Blood Angel's Red, which will give us that nice bright red tone, tying them back to their Dathomirian leader. We'll mostly be applying this to chest armour, the top of the shoulder armour, the remainder of the helmet and the trademark Mandalorian jetpack. With the rest of the base coats now locked in, we can come back to that visor. You may of course need to re-add some of that white we did earlier if you made any mistakes, otherwise add a nice coat of Imperial Fist to all of the whites to create a gorgeous yellow visor to make all the other Mandos swoon. Lastly, we can get these guys based and their rooms painted. I'm going to be using Geek Gaming Scenics fast drying basing glue and base ready Grimdark City Rubble, as I'm lazy and it's what I have to hand. These miniatures would probably also look really good on some desert themed bases or base to match your other Shadow Collective miniatures, but much like their home planet, I'm going to leave these guys in rubble. So there you have it, Mandalorian Super Commandos painted to a good tabletop standard and most importantly, fast. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It was my first crack at something longer form than a simple TikTok for painting content, so I'm very much welcoming feedback and I'm looking forward to making some more content in this vein in the future, because I really think this is where my heart is at on hobbying content. Anyways, catch you next time. See ya!